Hello everyone and welcome to Weather This Week. We have a couple of things to talk about, but the main topic will be severe weather. First, starting out with our accumulated precipitation from now through this upcoming Friday. And so we'll have quite a bit of precipitation here in the central US and actually some down here in the southwest US, and that'll be from Tropical Cyclone Alvin, which will continue to move through today on Sunday and linger a little bit around. That moisture will a little bit into Monday, but there won't be really any strong winds associated with this. It'll just be mostly rain, which is definitely beneficial to these areas. But some of these areas could see well over 2 or 3 inches into the central U.S., Oklahoma, Texas, and then even into the southern Florida peninsula, maybe 2, 3, almost 4 inches, maybe in some isolated areas possible there. But quite a bit of rain throughout the central U.S. and some of the eastern U.S. from now through this upcoming Friday. For today on Sunday, most of the temperatures will be at their peak well into the 70s and 80s, with maybe lower 90s possible into the far southern U.S., into Texas, maybe into portions of the southwestern U.S. But some of those temperatures into the southwest could be a little bit lower because of the rain moving into those areas, so that'll be good for sure. But once again, widespread 70s and 80s, even into the 60s up here in the northeast, and 50s in the northwestern U.S. for Sunday. And then as you get further into the week, still same story, probably once again on Monday, widespread 80s and some 90s in the southern U.S. Then as you get into Tuesday, that will shift further to the east, and cooler air will start to move in, and mostly warmer temperatures into the southern tier of the country, but still pretty warm temperatures to the east of that cold front into the Ohio Valley and northeast by Tuesday. Into Wednesday, same story again, cooler temperatures behind that system. We'll get to that in just one moment, but still temperatures well into the 80s throughout basically the entire eastern half of the country by Wednesday. Into Thursday as well, same story with pretty comfortable 70s temperatures throughout quite a bit of the country here, and into the southwestern U.S., maybe into the 80s, 90s there. And then as we get into Friday, finally, widespread 70s, 80s, and only some places hitting 90 by Friday. Then if we switch over to the morning run for the EPS ensembles here, and we go into this weekend, once again 70s throughout quite a bit of the northern half of the country. The southern half could see temperatures into the 80s and 90s. Into next Sunday on the 8th, same story, pretty much widespread 70s, 80s, and some 90s there for this upcoming weekend. Now looking at our precipitation with the European weather model. And so by today on Sunday, you'll have some areas of isolated storms and showers potentially across maybe Tennessee, parts of the Carolinas, into Texas as well, up to the kind of northwest of Texas, obviously, but into Montana, maybe Wyoming a little bit today on Sunday, and then even into Florida there. We do have a little bit of a severe weather risk, and we'll get to the risk later on in the video, and we'll discuss them in greater detail, but I probably won't be discussing the risk for today on Sunday, because it's just not too great at this time. But still, as we go into Monday, you can start to see our system that we'll be talking about move into the country, and you'll have kind of your first day of severe weather, really more organized severe weather, that is. And going into Tuesday as well, we have another severe weather risk in play, especially across these areas here, as you can see all these storms. And then going into Wednesday, that threat should shift east, but I think that severe weather risk will wind down just a little bit, and you'll have your low pressure in here to the northeast by Friday, and just some rain mostly into the eastern U.S. and storms, but nothing really too organized really compared out here into the central U.S. But as we get into this weekend, same thing again, maybe a system all the way up here into Canada, and that could deliver maybe another round of storms potentially maybe late this upcoming weekend into early next week, but we'll watch that. Doesn't look like too much of a pretty organized threat. Well, I do take that back a little bit, but the European does show some pretty moist air up here into the Midwest and kind of south central US, so we'll actually have to watch that for sure for maybe late this upcoming weekend, once again into early next week, with that pretty large upper level low there spinning about. But that'll be our main look for this week. We look at the GFS model as well and compare it, and look to there about the same time frame. Does not really show that system there that the European showed. Yeah, it really doesn't show it as much, so we'll continue to watch this as well and see how these models play out. But really, that'll be about all we can pretty much expect for the next week into this upcoming weekend. Now taking a quick look at the tropics, and so as you can see here, this is the 0Z run for the GFS, and so this will continue to load in here. And so the GFS has been kind of going crazy and consistently showing some sort of tropical cyclone into the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll look and see what this latest run shows, and it doesn't quite go out as far, but still it shows something there. And so don't be alarmed by this at all, because the GFS is sometimes prone to showing some crazy stuff with the tropics, but that doesn't mean we need to let our guard down really quite yet. But I'm not saying we need to sound the alarm or anything, but I think we could potentially see something as we get further into hurricane season, obviously, well later into June or July, but I don't think we'll see anything relatively quickly here. But if we look at the EPS ensembles, and so if we look at the 12Z run, and we'll go to this upcoming this Saturday into Sunday. We'll go this upcoming Sunday, June 8th. And so the ensembles, basically what this is it basically compiles quite a few different members, and what these members are represented by are these areas of low pressure, which is that little number there on your screen. There's a 99, that's a 999 millibar low pressure. This would be a 1006 millibar low pressure. And so once again, these are represented by these little red numbers. Each of the numbers is a member. And so what this is here for is it basically gives us an idea of where maybe a signal for any development would be. So it does show a little bit of a development signal here into the Eastern Pacific. So that was showing up with Alvin as well, but I think we could potentially see some maybe more development there into the Eastern Pacific. We'll have to watch that a little bit more. But looking at the Atlantic mostly right now and going to the European still EPS ensembles, it does not show a whole lot right here. So that's a good thing for sure. And that's just something the EPS ensembles is continuing to show really the past couple of days is just not a whole lot here into the Caribbean and Gulf. On the other hand, if we look at the GFS ensembles and we go to the 18Z run, it shows quite a bit more there. It just goes crazy. It lights up those areas into the Caribbean and gets that into the Gulf of America. And so this is obviously a signal for maybe a potential system. The ocean waters are plenty warm enough for tropical development, but I just don't think it's I don't really see it happening within the next week. I could maybe see it once again happening later as we get into June, but the GFS could be completely right about this, and we may see something that it shows within the next couple of weeks. But I just once again don't see this being a big time event anytime soon. So we'll continue to watch this. That's just what the EPS and GEFS ensembles show right now for the tropics, but that'll be it for the tropics there. Looking at today on Sunday for our severe weather threat, we're not going to go too much in depth with this, but we have a couple of areas we have actually a few marginal risk here into the Carolinas, Tennessee, Florida Peninsula, into Texas as well, into Colorado, New Mexico, into Montana and Idaho, and a slight risk here into Texas. And we do have a 2% tornado risk with that area in Texas. And then with our wind and hail risk, we have a 5% wind risk with all these risks here. And then with our hail risk, we do have a 15% hatched hail risk into Texas with a 5% around that, a 5% in the Carolinas, 5% out here, and 5% up here for Sunday. Then as we look at our outlook for Monday, we already have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk into portions of the kind of northern plains here, and a marginal risk into the central U.S. Then as we go for our outlook on Tuesday, and so we have a automatic 2 out of 5 slight risk here across the central U.S. and portions of the midwestern U.S. once again for Tuesday. Just briefly looking at our severe weather risk for Monday and Tuesday. And so as you can see here is our low pressure we've been talking about just a little bit. And we saw that earlier while we were looking at the precipitation for the week. But once again here on Monday, you can see quite a bit of instability across the central U.S. here for Monday once again. And so if we look at our low level jet on the GFS weather model, and it looks like we could get a pretty decent low level jet established across the central U.S., maybe a 50, 60 knot low level jet in some areas across the central U.S., and so that will help to aid in a tornado risk for sure across these areas. And so going into later on Monday night, that is, into Tuesday, that spreads further eastward, and you have a pretty defined, broad, low-level jet well into the 30 to 40 knot range there. Then going into Tuesday as well, that area continues into the Midwest and central, Kansas and Oklahoma, into the Midwest as well. And once again have a 30 to 40 knot low level jet across those areas. And you look at our instability here, still quite a bit of surface based instability, and that will once again help to aid in a severe weather risk for that day, and potentially probably actually a tornado risk once again. So that'll be what we'll have to watch for those 2 days. And after that, as we get into Wednesday, instability once again further to the east in the Ohio Valley, portions of the northeast, and the Mississippi Valley there, excuse me. And going into Friday as well, maybe even more instability showing up across the central U.S. for Friday, so we'll have to watch that as well. And that's just the GFS model. So maybe another severe weather risk again on Friday, but nothing as organized probably as what we are going to see on Monday and Tuesday. But that'll pretty much wrap up our discussion for today. For this week on the weather activity scale, I'm going to give it a 5.6. Where we will see a few days of severe weather for sure, but mainly we'll see about 2 to maybe 3 days of organized severe weather threats. And so this could change a little bit more, but I'm going to once again hover around the 5.6 range. And that'll be it for the video today, and I hope y'all have a great Sunday.